the firstborn of the goddess of prosperity, Hastar, from Tumbbad, explained. Hello everyone and welcome back to another gruesome video with Marvelous Videos. We have a very terrifying story for you today, but as terrifying as it may be, there are a lot of interesting tales around this film. It is a film that took the director 6 years to make, a very long time indeed. Tumbbad is a Hindi language horror film and was released earlier in 2018. Directed by Rahi Anil Barve, we will soon find out why it took them 6 years to make a horror film. It was the first Indian film to be played at the Critics' Week section of the Venice Film Festival. And it sure is nothing like an ordinary horror tale. Completely dipped in mythological folklore, it is equally gruesome. It is an incredibly beautiful film set in the 1920s that follows 3 generations of a single family that is deeply caught up in greed, desperation, and an ancient god. Oh, and there is a monster as well. Tumbbad has given a great projection of how to combine horror with traditional tales and a rather non-traditional setting. The film very successfully creates an environment that seems extremely real and believable. It is obviously a monster horror film, but apart from that, there are so many relationships that are explored. All the human drama that we get to see adds an even more horrific touch to the film and makes it more thrilling. And guess what? Tumbbad was nominated for 8 awards at the 64th Filmfare Awards, one of the largest organizations that celebrates the Hindi language Bollywood cinema. Some of the nominations included the categories of Best Film, Best Cinematography and Special Effects. You will not be surprised after watching the film that it ended up winning in 3 of the categories, which included Best Cinematography. The film is about the god Hastar from Lovecraftian lore. The original script, written by the director, is somewhat based on a story a friend had told Barve about in 1993, and this story was by Marathi writer Narayan Dharap, who is a horror writer. Barve wrote the first draft for the film in 1997 when he was just 18 years of age. There's a lot more to this movie than just a god. It seems like this god is somewhat of a monster. But what does a monster have to do with a family living in poverty in a small village? Well, let us see what horrific incidents happen in this movie.
Before we go into our list, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click from you, but it means a lot to us. Thank you. Let's begin.
Tumbbad, a horror of greed. The film begins with a narration of a firstborn son of the goddess of prosperity and how his actions led him to become this evil monster called Hastar. So, the ancient tale tells us that because he was evil, the goddess did not want anyone to worship Hastar or include his existence in any religious texts. He was to remain forgotten forever. Looks like we have the monster of our film, and here's a little trivia for you. The title of the film was borrowed from Shripad Narayan Pense's novel Tumbbad Not. The film is told in 3 chapters, and according to Rahi Anil Barve, this chapter division is a metaphor indicating the journey of India as we know it today. The first chapter begins in 1918 when someone is about to remember Hastar. We are in the village of the protagonist Vinayak Rao, Tumbbad, a small village in western India on the banks of the Jagbudi River. This is the place where Vinayak's ancestors built a temple for Hastar. A lot of darkness surrounds the village, and it looks like it's always raining in Tumbbad. As it turns out, after Hastar's temple was built, the anger of all the gods and goddesses fell upon Tumbbad in the form of never-ending rain. Oh, and guess what? Tumbbad, the city, actually exists, but of course the folklore is not present anywhere. So, in Vinayak's house there seems to be something locked in a room that scares him, his brother and his mother. At first, when his mother goes inside the room to feed this thing, it almost feels like they are living with a monster. So you might think that it is Hastar. But guess what? That is actually Vinayak's grandmother, and they are supposed to feed her or else she wakes up. But what will happen even if she does wake up? Well, we soon find out that when Vinayak is left alone with her, she tricks him into going inside her room and attacks him. She looks almost like a monster with gory eyes and sticks pointing out of her face. a really horrifying sight indeed. Another twist here is that if you say sleep or else Hastar will come, she will immediately fall asleep. Looks like this must be some kind of curse that she has to live with. They also constantly talk about Hastar's treasure, which is supposed to be in their village and belongs to their family since they were the ones who brought back Hastar. But until his death, Viniac's father never found this treasure, and so they finally decide to leave the village and move away to Pune. And remember the curse of Tumbbad experiencing rain all through the year? Well, they shot the film over 4 monsoons to capture the effect. That is definitely insane. We are then taken 15 years into the future, 1933, where chapter 2 begins. A grown-up Vinayak has come back to Tumbbad to look for Hastar's treasure, which he considers to be his generational wealth, and the unthinkable happens. We soon discover that his old monster-like grandmother is still alive. Although in a more skeleton-like form with a beating heart outside the body, she still talks. After constantly asking her to tell him where this treasure is, she finally gives in and asks him to burn her in return, because all she wants is peace from her suffering. Over the period, Vinayak would always come to Tumbbad for a few days and return home to his wife in Pune with a few gold medallions. At this point, we still don't know where exactly this treasure is. Soon, a co-worker, Raghav, starts getting suspicious about the increasing number of medallions he brings. Wondering where it's coming from, he follows Vinayak to Tumbbad. Now this is where we see the real horror of Hastar. Deep underground, what looks like a hollow cave with red walls which seem almost like a womb, lives Hastar, who appears when presented with a doll made of dough. And to take away the gold from his loincloth, Vinayak forms a circle made of grain and throws the doll. While Hastar eats, he tears the loincloth and collects as many gold medallions as he possibly can. Wow, that sure is a scary task, even if it has helped his family get rid of poverty. Now we come to chapter 3 of the film, set in 1947 in independent India. Vinayak teaches his son Padurang how to enter the cave womb and grab the gold as quickly as possible. He then takes him to Tumbbad mansion to practice going down inside the cave and tells him not to bring the dough doll. But, well, like any kid, Padurang secretly brings a dough doll and Hastar attacks. They barely make it out alive without being bitten by Hastar. If they had, the curse would have turned them into a creature exactly like Vinayak's grandmother. Padurang then plans to make multiple dough dolls to keep feeding Hastar so that they can steal his loincloth full of gold. Nonetheless, they are about to be in a lot of danger. Several clones of Hastar appear for each doll they have. With no other option, Vinayak ties the dolls to his body to lure all the clones, allowing his son to make it back alive. Padurang returns to the surface when they are all gone, only to see his father has turned into a creature. And so he sadly tells his father to sleep, or else Hastar will come, and then sets him on fire. A great story with great actors literally made this horror film worth the watch. And boy, is it scary enough to give you lots of goosebumps. Well, let us find out what exactly is the story of our demon god, Hastar. Hastar. History and folklore explained. We get to know a lot about Hastar at the beginning of the film. It is a tale of the powerful earthen goddess of prosperity. As the name suggests, this goddess is said to have unlimited grain and gold. We see the figure of the goddess with a lot of hands. With one side, she is giving out plenty of grains, and with the other, she is giving gold. The earth is her womb, and we find out that when the universe was created, she gave birth to 160 million gods and goddesses, something only a divine deity could do, right? Well, Hastar is her firstborn and the most beloved. As time went on, Hastar became extremely greedy for his mother's grain and gold because he wanted it all for himself. He first tried to steal all of her gold, and of course, he was successful. That is why the film talks about his treasure, because all of the gold is now in his possession. But when he tried to steal the grains, the other gods and goddesses, his siblings, found out about his theft and obviously wanted to destroy him. So they blast him into fine particles in order to stop him. But before they could destroy his entire existence with one last explosion, the goddess saved his remaining bits of particles by imprisoning them in her womb for eternity. So, this is where the fallen sun now lives. He looks like a male figure whose skin has been torn off. A blood-red creature wearing his shiny, huge golden crown, living inside a womb-like cave pit. He appeared in the village of Tumbbad because they began to worship him, which woke him up from his long sleep. And when awake, he is always hungry for the grain that he was denied. His curse is of course the curse of hunger. When he bites a human, they become immortal but still age, and can also die in some other ways. Constant need to feed consumes these cursed individuals. This curse is so powerful that the hunger even makes them want to eat the flesh of other human beings. That sounds deadly. No doubt, how about how scared Venice must have been when he was alone with his grandmother? Hastar can also detect the presence of grain within 120 feet of him. He can tell which place has the most amount of flour and can sense the direction of that place. But he does have a drawback. If a sheet or anything covers the grain, he will not be able to find it. That is why we saw in the film that until Vinayak took out the dough doll from his bag after going inside the womb, Hastar did not come out. What makes him more dangerous is some of his other abilities. Magic has no effect on him because he can resist the spells that you cast at it. He can also apparently climb any surface, even the upside down ceilings, and he definitely moves fast. It is unimaginable that Soham Shah, the actor who played the role of Vinayak Rao, actually had to gain 18 kilos for his character. And since the film took 6 years to complete, he literally maintained that weight for all those years. Hastar is an evil creature that clearly shows us how greed and desperation can lead to our downfall. If this can happen to a god prince, well, then it can easily happen to humans as well. Is there going to be a Tumbbad 2? Soham Shah, the lead actor and the producer of Tumbbad, has not given any confirmation about a sequel to the film, but in an interview he did assure horror fans that he has given a lot of thought about making Tumbbad a franchise. So, if another movie is made, it could either be a sequel or even a prequel to Tumbbad because it will be a whole new world with lots of different, interesting characters. It looks like the writers are still looking for a good idea for the next film because they obviously want it to be as good as this one. Fans will still have to wait a bit longer as nothing has been said so far. Hastar's story comes to us from an old book of a collection of stories by Narayan Darab, which is titled Anolki Disha 3, and the story is called Aji. The shooting was done without any sunlight on red camera in digital format, and believe it or not, Tumbbad was shot in a lot of different locations across Maharashtra, India, some of which were villages of the Satara district. With such an incredible star cast and production team and the film being reshot as well as rewritten, director Rahi Anil Barve has definitely done a wonderful job of creating this horror film that leaves us scared and clenching our fists pretty much throughout the entire film. If you like this video, please make sure you give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe. Until next time, have a good one.